Welcome to Dead End Street. I'm Al. Welcome back. It's been a little while. Things got a little crazy for a while, but we're back. We'll pick up our best of the years album series. We're going to pick back up at 1985, which was a pretty great year. Um, Before we get to that, I want to correct a glaring omission that I made in the 1984 video, which was I embarrassingly left off one of my favorite albums of that year, the debut album from the Icicle Works, great band from Liverpool. Um, Had I remembered it, it would have surely been top 10. Great band. Love is a Wonderful Color is one of my all-time favorite songs. So the fact that I forgot that album is quite ridiculous. If you take best attributes of the Beatles and the best attributes of, say, the other Liverpool band, Echo and the Bunnymen, you come pretty close. But there's some really great songs on there. Cauldron of Love, um, obviously Whisper to a Scream, and the obvious Love is a Wonderful Color, one of my favorite tracks of all time. It's a cross between Norwegian Wood and The Cutter by Echo and the Bunnymen. So that being said, let's pick up with our 1985. And to make good in my omission, I'm going to include at number 25 the second Icicle Works record, The Small Price of a Bicycle. Vocalist and songwriter and guitarist Ian McNabb is one of the best voices of the era, and he's still great to this day. And if you get a chance, there's actually a video floating around YouTube of him and the late great Roy Corkhill, who just passed either this week or last. He was the second bass player for Icicle Works, and was with them in the late 80s up until the last few shows. So 24 is going to be Phantasmagoria by The Damned. This is the first record after the Captain jumped ship, leaving Dave Vanian and Rat Scabies to continue on their own. And I know this is a very divisive record amongst Damned purists, but I think it's a great record. I think Dave did a great job. It might be his best songwriting, might be his best vocals. Some great tracks on here: Standing in the Shadows, Sanctum Sanctorum, both great. Also, Is It a Dream is a great track. And of course, Grimly Fiendish, which I loved that song so much when I was younger. I actually decided to name my dog Grimly Fiendish. He's out there somewhere. Number 23 is going to be Waiting for the Flood by post-punk supergroup The Armory Show, featuring members of Susie and the Banshees, Magazine, and the Skids. This was their first and only album. Contains the late great John McGeoch on guitar, who I've made no bones about being my favorite guitarist, and Richard Jobson from the Skids on vocals. Though the record does suffer from some of the dated 80s overproduction, there are some unmistakably great tracks, and of course, excellent guitar work. Number 22 is going to be Heads and Hearts by The Sound. Though this is not as solid as their first two records, that's a very tall order anyway. Heads and Hearts, there's still some of my favorite Adrian Borland compositions. Total Recall is definitely one of them. But obviously, I've said before, this is a very overlooked group, and if you don't know of them and you like late 70s and early 80s alt rock, I would definitely research them. Number 21 is going to be Nada by Death in June. It's a very weird mixture of folk and industrial. And not only is it unique, but it's also kind of captivating. The Calling Mark II, Carousel and the awesome She Said Destroy are some of the really great tracks that are on this album. Number 20 is going to be Everything But the Girl with Love Not Money. Here in the States, I think Everything But the Girl is primarily known for their 90s records, where they were more of like a dance electronica kind of act. But in the early years, they really dabbled in a lot of different kinds of music, especially like jangle pop and country western, which is all represented on here. Um, this album is a lot closer to something to the Smiths than it is the electronic stuff that they got known for later on. The songs are very well written. There's some jazz tinges to the record also, and Tracy Thorn's voice is beautiful as always. Number 19 is going to be Flip Your Wig by Husker Du. I fully intended to put both of the 1985 Do records on here, but I decided on only this one because I wanted to fit as many albums on here as I could, and I just like this one better. It's more melodic than New Day Rising. It contains quite possibly might be my favorite Husker Du song, Green Eyes. Uh, I love that track and has a lot of Grant's best compositions on here. We haven't figured it out yet. I'm Team Grant. I do like Bob, but I like Bob better with Sugar, I think. I don't know, is that weird? Maybe it's weird, but anyway, number 18 is going to be Love and Rockets with Seventh Dream of a Teenage Heaven. This is the first Love and Rockets record. When the three members departed from Bauhaus and Peter Murphy went his own way, fresh off of Daniel Ash's stint with Tones on Tail. But this record really explores their psychedelic side, kind of leaves a lot of the darker stuff of the Bauhaus era aside. It's still here, but it's not as lingering. Songs are given a lot more room to grow and to air out. The results in some longer tracks on here, but it still definitely works. My personal favorite track is The Game, which is the best Syd Barrett era Floyd that wasn't written or recorded by Sid or the Floyd. And I don't think they'd mind me saying that. Number 17 is going to be The Firstborn is Dead by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. This record is where Nick Cave starts to show more of his eclectic musical interests, in particular American country and blues. But he takes them and makes them like terrifying and cold. It's extremely excellent. The patience to let these songs breathe is quite masterful. This begins with a string. This begins a string of amazing records that lasts decades for Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Number 16 is Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears. So, I mean, I grew up in this era, so I was in my my pre-teen years, 1985. And if you grew up in that era, you know that this record was truly inescapable. It was, to me, it still is a very happy place record. Every time I hear the opening of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, it's instantly the summer of 1985 to me in my mind. It's truly a nostalgia bomb. It's how I refer to those songs or records that just as soon as you hear them, it just transports you to a certain part of your life. All the singles on here are excellent. Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Shout, Head Over Heels. The album's deep tracks are decent also, but it's truly the singles that drive this record. And they really represent the year 1985 in a way really probably no other record can. Number 15 is going to be Boys and Girls by the great Brian Ferry. A lot of people, maybe even me included, will kind of consider this album essentially Avalon Part 2. It's beautifully recorded. slick, sophisticated hooks. But I think it's a little bit more um, condensed and to the point than Avalon is. I think "Don't Stop the Dance" is one of his best solo tracks, even to this day. "Windswept" should have been a bigger hit than it was. Um, and I know that this album pretty much set the tone for the rest of Brian Ferry's solo career. Um, because before this, most of his solo records contained primarily covers until Roxy Music broke up. So it's an important record in Brian Ferry's career. Number 14 is "This Is the Sea" by Waterboys. This is a very cohesive record. It flows perfectly. It has a really nice 80s, fat 80s drum sound to it, um, with some really uniquely beautiful songs. The late Carl Wallinger, the keyboardist, who later went on to form World Party, who sadly passed away too long ago. He really makes his presence known throughout this record. "Don't Bang the Drum," "The Pan Within," and the classic "The Hole of the Moon" are are definitely the biggest standouts on this record. Number 13 is going to be "Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry" with "Talk About the Weather." This is one of my all-time favorite fall autumn records. Just kind of think maybe Killing Joke meets Sisters with a dash of The Damned, maybe. But they really create their own sound. They really are very original. Just trying to give you an idea what they may sound like by using other acts. But the songs are dark, they're brooding, but they're very accessible and catchy, with some very interesting and odd guitar work throughout the entire album. And my favorite Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry track is "This Today," which is an outstanding track. Number 12 is going to be Community FK with "Close One Sad Eye." Community FK is one of the leading act was and still is one of the leading acts in the death rock movement in the United States and the West Coast in the late 70s and the early 80s, led by their great frontman and songwriter Patrick Motta. You can definitely hear tinges of Joy Division and Killing Joke and Bowie, but when it's all mixed together, it's a sound that's completely their own. Um, every song on here is a banger, but some standouts are "The Other World," "Noob," the very Joy Division influenced "Junkies," and the amazing single, the first song I ever heard from them, called "Something Inside Me Has Died." The vocals in that track alone are worth the price of admission, but Patrick's vocals throughout this record are outstanding, as they are on all the Community FK records. Number 11 is The Replacements with their 1985 record "Tim." So, The Replacements' major label debut is chock full of grit, slop, and just raw, honest emotion. To me, Paul Westerberg is one of the greatest American lyricists of all time. He's definitely in my upper echelon. Um, "Bastards of Young" is an amazing song. "Kiss Me on the Bus," "Left of the Dial." Um, of course, "Here Comes a Regular" are all obvious Replacements classics. Um, Many people I've heard have complained about the production and the drum sound in particular. It was produced actually by Tommy Ramone or Tom Orgay. But the production's never bothered me. I mean, I heard the remix version and it's fine, but I think I've just grown up with this version, and to change at this point after 40 something years, it's not gonna, to me, it sounds odd and I prefer the original. But that's just me. What do you think? Anyway, number 10 is going to be "Low Life" by New Order. Um, this record is where they pretty much shed um, anything that was left from the Joy Division days. Bernard Sumner stops trying to emulate Ian Curtis and tries to come up with his own style with mixed results on this record. I don't think he was fully confident yet in his vocal abilities. The vocals do improve greatly on the next record, but I do believe, I think maybe if they could have taken a little bit more time and done a couple more vocal tracks, or I don't know how many tracks it took to get to this point, but I think it really could have helped the record. But regardless, I mean, I'm nitpicking here. It's a great album. The Perfect Kiss, Subculture, That Time of Night, one of my favorite, and Sunshine and Sunrise are kind of a couple of my favorite all-time New Order tracks. Great album. Number 9. I had this one all up and down, had it higher, had it much higher at one point. But anyway, it's Hounds of Love by Kate Bush. Now, I've always loved this record. I've discovered it sometime at the beginning of college. Became one of my go-tos for many years. And I mean, I had this as high up as in the top 5, but I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't adore this record. I do. But to most people, this is her best record. I'm not so sure. But anyway, I mean, look, with any album that has Running Up the Hill and Cloud Busting and the title track, I mean, it makes a really good case to be anyone's best album. Mother Stands for Comfort is also a great, great track. Number 8 is going to be The Cult with Love. This is one of the many reinventions of Ian Astbury and Billy Duffy. They've reinvented themselves so many times that they are just basically a band that's impossible to categorize. Are they a psychedelic band? Are they a post-punk band? Are they classic rock? Are they arena rock? Are they art rock? Alt rock? The answer is yes. They're all of those things. And this record is all of those things. I truly love every song on this record. It was a very important record to me in my musical development. I first bought it, I think, in 1988. So we're talking like what, 8th grade, something like that. And as a young, primarily just kind of rock fan, hard rock, classic rock, it really kind of opened my eyes to and ears to the world of possibilities. And it left me looking for more bands of their ilk. And of course, everyone knows She Sells Sanctuary. It's been in many a commercial, many a sports event. I've always preferred Rain. And some of the other my favorite tracks on there are Hollow Man, which is awesome, Big Neon Glitter, and Brother Wolf, Sister Moon, which is really haunting musically and great vocal by Ian Astbury. Number 7 is going to be Psycho Candy by Jesus and Mary Chain. There was never a record like this one, and there hasn't been one since. There never will be one. You can copy it, but it's not going to be the same. You've never heard it, which if you're watching this at this point, I highly doubt you have not heard Psycho Candy, but I've always described it as the Ramones meets the Beach Boys meets the Velvets meets the Ronettes. Sounds crazy, right? But if you put it on within the first 4 minutes, you'll hear all of those influences. It is a sonic assault that will leave you either disgusted or elated. And that's the entire point of the record. We talk a lot more. My friend Dr. Byrne and I, we did a Jesus and Mary Chain full album ranking, including the newest one. If you have any interest in watching that, where we talk a lot more about Psycho Candy, I'll put a link in the description for you to watch. Number 6, which I'm surprised I have it this low. I mean, a lot of people will also probably find it strange, but I have The Cure with Head on the Door. I love The Cure. They're a top 5 band of mine, favorite band of mine. They've been there every step of the way from my young years all the way up to now. I love just about everything they've done. And I know this album tops many other Cure album rankings, and I get it. But I just think that there are more Cure records that are more consistent. That being said, side one is a phenomenal group of songs. In Between Days, Kyoto Song, The Blood, Six Different Ways, and Push might be one of the greatest sides to any Cure record. It might be the greatest in one or two, top one or two. It's side two that I've always felt didn't hold up its end of the bargain. So I love a night like this. Um, Baby Screams is good. Um, Sync is good. I've never been a huge fan of Close to Me. I don't know why. I don't hate it. It's just not one of my favorite Cure songs. Um, Honestly, I think they could have replaced that track with Exploding Boy, which was a B-side that went along with one of these records, and one of the other B-sides that I thought were excellent that went along with this album. But it's still my sixth favorite album of 1985. So I must like it a lot. Number five is going to be First and Last and Always, the debut record by Sisters of Mercy. This first full length Sisters record to me is the only Sisters record that matters. That might make people mad. But to me, Eldritch, Pusey, Adams, and Marks will always be Sisters of Mercy. Um, I think after this record, and then when they all went their separate ways, for the exception of Andrew, I it just felt like a solo project. But we'll get into that later when we get into the next albums. But the combo of Husey on 12-string electric and Marks on 6-string is one of the most unique sounds in rock history, along with the drum machine. And Craig Adams' fantastic bass playing. Andrew Eldritch never came close to this lyrically or songwriting output than he did on this record. The lyrics on Amphetamine Logic, Marianne, and especially the lyrics on 9 While 9 are just stunning lyrics. Just some of my, just fantastic. Almost every tracks in under 4 minutes. It's just perfect. And there's other songs that didn't make this record, like Blood Money, that are just fantastic. So if you get around to it, you can search out. I think there's the expanded edition, which I only have the vinyl, but it has all the extra tracks that came along with them that are just as good as the songs that are on the record. Number four is going to be Nighttime by Killing Joke. This is crazy to me that there's that much good stuff this year that this is only number four, because this, for a long time, was one of my top 10 favorite records of all time. I mean, nuts. I still love it. I mean, it's just not, you know. But I think even though this is Killing Joke at their commercial peak, and normally for a lot of other bands that might not be a good thing, but I think with Killing Joke it could be further from the truth. To me, this is their most complete record, the most coherent record. It contains some of Geordie's greatest guitar moments. It contains Paul Ferguson's greatest drumming, without a doubt. Raven's a fantastic bass player on here, and this is by far Jazz Coleman's best vocal performance. I mean, it has Love Like Blood, 80s, Darkness Before Dawn, Tazaban, Europe, and that's just half the tracks on the record, and every track on the album is perfect. It's just an amazing album. Number three is going to be Chameleons with What Does Anything Mean, Basically. The follow-up to the classic Script of the Bridge is a classic in its own right. It's a bit more dreamy and a bit more ethereal, and not as ominous as the first record, although the first record also had its moments of um, ecstasy and joy and wonder, but it was definitely more dark than this record. But the songwriting, the melody, the lyrics, the guitar interplay is fantastic. It's equally as good as the first record, and it's also intriguing. It's enthralling. It's just a masterpiece record, again, from the Chameleons. This is one of my all-time favorite bands. They just finished up another United States tour. I just saw them a couple weeks ago, and they were fantastic again. Number two is going to be Heyday by The Church. It truly hurts my heart to put this at number two because this is a number one album. It just feels like that to me. This record does not let up for 1 second. Every single track is a banger. The beautiful guitar interplay by Marty Wilson Piper and Peter Koppes is some of my favorite guitar playing ever put to record. This is Steve Kilbee's best lyrics and songwriting up until this point, from 80 to 85. The standouts on this record are all of the tracks, but in particular, just to name a few, Myrrh, Already Yesterday, Columbus, and the excellent Tantalized. And I'm fully aware, because I'll get this in the comments, and it's okay. It doesn't, it's just, I'm just going to make them fully aware that in the States that this came out in February of 1986. However, in Europe and in Australia, it was released in November of 85. So I usually go with the earliest release date. I've done that a couple of times. I did it with a couple of Pretenders records in earlier episodes. I'm going to just keep doing that just to kind of, in my head, that kind of keeps it straight. So, Heyday by The Church, number two. So, that leads us to our number one record of 1985, which is going to be, to a shock to not many people, is Meat is Murder by the Smiths. So contrary to what many who know me think, considering my massive Smiths fandom, I didn't click with them immediately. I mean, I was familiar with them when they were together, but I mean, they broke up when I was 13, so most people don't relate to the Smiths when you're 13. If you do, you are probably in for a rough ride. I mean, you kind of have to have some problems to kind of relate to the Smiths, you know. It wasn't until, you know, I moved from my old neighborhood, a lot of change happened. I got dumped a couple times by a couple of girlfriends. High school wasn't going great. I started to feel kind of alienated. And then I heard this record and thought, ah, now I get it. In a very real way. The Smiths were kind of the Beatles for Gen X, you know? There's a lot in common with them. They existed for about 5 years. They made 4 incredible records and a bunch of standalone singles that were great, influenced 9 million bands, broke up at the height of their popularity, and they never even thought about getting back together ever again. No money could get them back together. The only difference is that the Smiths are far bigger now than they were when they were together. But I digress. Back to this wonderful record. This one offers, this one differs from the other three Smiths records, studio records, in that it lacks that sardonic Morrison humor. It's pretty just serious and dark, really. There's quite a bit of rockabilly and R&B influence, especially on Johnny Marr's part when it comes to the guitar. But the classics, like That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, just gut-wrenching. And obviously a massive influence on a very young Jeff Buckley, who was obviously a massive fan, who covered at least 2 Smith songs that I know of on his records. And from what his record collection looked like, he had every Smiths record. Nowhere Fast is probably my favorite Smiths rocker. Well, I Wonder is probably the world's greatest rainy day track. The title track legit made me a vegetarian for about 4 years. Um, it didn't stick, but um, Barbarism Begins at Home is probably the most perfect example of how tight these three musicians were at the height of their power. The three musicians being Johnny Marr, Andy Rourke, and Mike Joyce. Uh, if you get a chance, on YouTube. There's a live version floating around of a TV performance of 1985 of them performing "Barbarism Begins at Home," and Andy Rourke is just absolutely amazing. Um, Andy was great, and with him gone, there could never be a Smiths reunion. So that's out the window. This obviously will not be the last we hear of the Smiths going forward. Um, they do have two more studio records left in the next couple of years going forward. But looking at 1986, I started kind of putting my list together. Three of my all-time favorite records came out all in that same year, and I have no idea how I'm going to go about ranking that. Yeah, so that's it. Um, Sorry it took so long. It won't take much longer to come out with the next one. We have some stuff coming up with Mr. Bry, a little bit more on the hard rock and classic rock type stuff. Dr. Byrne and I are going to be doing a Psychedelic Furs albums ranking. I'm still trying to compile my church albums ranking. I decided to do the whole discography instead of just a certain era. So it's going to take a little longer because you church fans know there's a shit ton of albums and you have to decide which ones you're going to count and which ones don't. And I'm also, since I'm in a big mood for the with the new record coming out and the tour coming up, why don't we do a the discography ranking when the new album comes out in a couple of weeks? Sound good? All right. So thanks again for checking in. Check out our Facebook, our Instagram, TikTok, X, and until next time, see you. Thanks.